Every nation on Earth lives in debt. The United States now owes over $38 trillion, the highest level in its history. The European Union carries around $14 trillion, and Japan nearly $9 trillion. Even oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia or export giants like Germany and China owe vast sums. But here's the paradox. If everyone owes money, who is everyone owing it to? Welcome to Money Historian, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Debt isn't just a burden, it's the architecture of the modern world. Every war, every crisis, every boom and bust all rest upon an invisible scaffolding of IOUs. And if you follow the chain of creditors long enough, you'll find something unsettling. The world doesn't owe money to anyone in particular. It owes it to itself. But that doesn't mean everyone benefits equally. To understand how we reached this point, a planet drowning in over $315 trillion of debt, nearly 3 times the size of the global economy, we have to go back to the beginning. Centuries before credit cards or digital transfers, the idea of national debt was born not on Wall Street, but in war. In 1694, England was fighting France and running out of gold. The king turned to merchants for help. In exchange for a stream of interest payments backed by future taxes, they financed the crown. To manage this new arrangement, the Bank of England was created. It was revolutionary. The state could now spend money it didn't yet have, and lenders received something priceless, a promise from the government, tradable and sellable, the birth of the government bond, the seed of modern finance. France copied it. The Netherlands perfected it. The newly independent United States used it to fund its revolution and its westward expansion. Debt became not a sign of weakness, but of credibility. The power to borrow became the power to rule. Empires once conquered territory for gold. Now they issued bonds for interest. The battlefield became the balance sheet. 3 centuries later, debt has become the world's dominant export. Global borrowing grows by $1 trillion every 100 days. Every nation owes. Every bank lends. Every citizen, through taxes, savings, and pensions, is both debtor and creditor. But who holds the other end of the rope? Let's start with the United States, because its debt isn't just national, it's global. Out of that $38 trillion, about half is publicly held, owed to investors rather than the government itself. 2/3 of those investors are American institutions, banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurers, and the Federal Reserve. The remaining third, roughly $9 trillion, is held abroad. Japan holds about $1 trillion, China around $800 billion, then the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So, yes, the US owes China, but that's only about 2% of the total. Most of America's debt is owed to America. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks buy them. The Fed often buys them back, creating new dollars in the process. Americans pay taxes that fund interest on those bonds, which flow back into American retirement accounts. It's a circular mirror, a real debt, but one reflected within the same system. And this circularity is global. Japan lends to the US. The US lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing nations through the World Bank, and those nations lend back by holding Western bonds. It's a planetary game of hot potato, except the potato is made of promises. Every promise is backed by another promise, like a poker table where every player borrows chips from the next. The only rule, nobody stands up. Behind all of this lies the most powerful force, the markets. Hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks manage tens of trillions in assets. They decide who can borrow cheaply and who must pay dearly to survive. When they lose confidence, currencies collapse, governments fall, and economies can be rewritten overnight. Democracy chooses who governs, markets decide who survives. And at the heart of it all stands the central bank, the high priest of this financial religion. Central banks don't just manage debt, they create it. Each time the Federal Reserve or European Central Bank buys bonds, new money is born. Every dollar in circulation represents a unit of debt somewhere else. There's no such thing as debt-free money. For decades, this loop has survived on confidence. As long as investors believe governments will pay interest, even if never the principal, the machine keeps running. But when confidence breaks, history repeats. Greece 2010, unpayable debt, collapsing bonds, IMF rescue, austerity, and a lost generation. Argentina, Sri Lanka, different stories, same outcome. When the system cracks, the creditors emerge. The IMF, the rating agencies, the faceless bondholders. And yet, the machine restarts. New loans replace old ones. Old debts are restructured. Because in the modern age, debt isn't meant to be repaid. It's meant to roll over. Governments treat debt like a subscription, renew it endlessly. Interest becomes the real product, the rent charged for stability. The system depends on it, like a shark that must keep swimming to breathe. The global economy runs not on repayment, but on belief. A U.S. Treasury bond is not a liability. It's the foundation of global markets. Pension funds hold it, banks use it as security, and central banks treat it as money. If governments ever truly paid off their debt, the financial world would collapse. So instead, they keep issuing more, not recklessly, but rhythmically. Debt has become the heartbeat of capitalism. That's why talk of balancing the budget or paying off the national debt is political theater. The goal isn't to eliminate debt, it's to sustain belief in it. Because once belief fades, the system stops breathing. Debt was never meant to be paid back. It was meant to keep the world believing it will be. It's a closed loop of trust, but that trust is not shared equally. When we say we owe it to ourselves, that's only half true. Interest payments flow upward, from workers and taxpayers to institutions and investors. Debt is not just a transfer between nations, it's a transfer between classes. The system rewards those who own debt and punishes those who serve it. It's the same story scaled up, from households to nations to the planet. Creditors aren't villains. Debtors aren't victims. They're two sides of the same machine. But when the machine runs out of fuel and confidence collapses, we remember what debt really is, a promise that cannot be kept forever. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers, and Money Historian will show you where to look.